One for back there and one for up here. All right. Well, good morning. My name is Andrea Marwa, and I work for the Illinois School for the Deaf, where you are, for their outreach department, which is not at this school, it is the rest of the state. So one of the things that I'd like you to keep in mind is after today, you can always reach me by phone or by email, and you will have that contact information. I'm going to share a ton of information with you today. If you have questions, raise your hand. There will be breaks. We're going to do this in 3 steps today, so if you have a question and you want to stay after, I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. So a little bit about me. First and foremost, I'm a parent of a 16-year-old child who is deaf. I guess she'd be angry if I called her a child, so young lady. I also have a 14-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. I live in Naperville, and I do work for the School for the Deaf Outreach, where I do training and consulting. And I also do one-on-one consults for advocacy and IDEA support, which we'll go over what that is today. I am the president of Illinois Hands and Voices. Anyone heard of that organization? Okay. If you haven't and you're interested in hearing more about it, let me know. And Andrea Stambaugh, who's one of the members, is also on my board of directors for Hands and Voices. So if you guys have questions, you can ask her as well. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is how your child can be protected under the law. The most thing we're going to talk about today is special education law, but we're going to talk about other laws that can protect them as well. So if I were to recommend one book, this would be it. This is From Emotions to Advocacy. It's an easy read. It talks about how to advocate for your child in the education setting. It is written by an attorney and a special ed therapist. So it's really great, well-rounded, and the attorney can legally disseminate the law, so make it more understandable for you. This is another book produced by the Hands and Voices folks, and it is specific to deaf and hard of hearing. So it's the similar information than what's in From Emotions to Advocacy, but it's deaf specific. From Emotions to Advocacy is Every Disability Incorporated. So the most important thing to remember today when we're talking about the information I'm sharing is that you are an integral, important part of the team that will design your child's education. Once that plan is designed, you are also an important member who will share information throughout the year. You are your child's advocate until they can advocate for themselves. Okay, so it's very important that you understand legally what you are allowed to do and what your rights are so that you can advocate fully for them. So many laws can protect children with disabilities. But first I have to give you my disclaimer because I am not an attorney. I am a lay advocate, so therefore anything I provide to you today cannot be brought against me in a court of law. Basically put, I cannot disseminate law. It's not legal for me to do that. So if I'm sharing legal information with you today, I guarantee that it is verbatim from the law. It is not my interpretation of it. If you feel that you require an attorney, and hopefully after today you won't feel that way, but if you feel your school district is going to give you a rough time, then we can certainly talk about attorneys in the state that can assist you. So just to get a feel, who has a child that is under 3 years old? Okay, and then those of you over 3 years old. Okay, so those of you who are over 3 years old, you have already had your first IEP meeting, right? So we're going to talk a lot about that today, and oftentimes I hear, oh, I wish I would have known that information before my first IEP. It's not too late. You're going to have an IEP meeting every year, so good information will be shared for all of you. So IDEA, has anybody thought, what is she talking about? What is IDEA? Anyone raise their hand if you don't know what that is? Good, you just advocated for yourself. You get an A+. IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It is a federal law that protects children in public school systems who have disabilities. Section 504, anyone heard of this before? Yes. Anyone have their child under a 504 plan? Whew, good. Section 504 is another law that can protect students in school. It is under the Rehabilitation Act of 1972. It is a protection, but it only provides access to children. It does not provide individual education planning. So as we get through the day today, you'll understand the differences between those, and I will drive home to you why it is important that no one should have a 504 until they can advocate for themselves. And we'll talk about why that is.
I don't have a hearing loss child, but I do have a special ed child that does have a 504
Okay.
and an IEP both.
Okay.
Both for,
She has both, so she says she has another child that isn't,
she's not deaf.
she is not deaf and hard of hearing, but she does have a 504 and an IEP? Okay, well, we'll talk about that because you only need one. So we'll talk about that, but if they work, they work. And this is one thing that I've found. I think maybe 3 years ago, somebody brought their 504 document to me and they said, you told me I should be protected under IDEA and I'm protected under this 504. It was an IEP that I was looking at, it's just the district called it a 504. So sometimes we have to look at it that way. But if you were to go to a court of law with a 504 plan and say, they did not provide my child with this individual education planning that they said they would, that 504 would not hold up. It's only going to provide access. What about ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act? Everybody heard of that? Right? So when you go to a public building and you have to push a button so that it opens so a wheelchair can get through, that would be an ADA thing. Your children are protected under ADA all the time, in and out of school. So we'll talk about that. So, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. You guys will have this on your CD when you go home, so you can go back to these slides. But these are, if you want to go searching the net, you want to find information out about this, this is a great resource. This is the IDEA website by the federal government. So if you have a question, say you want to know if something is written into the law, you can go there, there's a search engine, you can go through and find out. This is what that website looks like, and I've circled where your main place to go would be, law and policy. And when you click on that, this is what it looks like. So Part B is all of you who raised your hand that your child is over 3. You guys are in Part B. Part C is those infants and toddlers, so 0 to 3. So any of you in the early intervention system, you guys are Part C. So those are the 2 sections of that law that we're going to talk about today. So the purpose of the IDEA is a free, very important, appropriate public education to meet the needs of a child, their individual needs, to prepare them for employment, independent living, or further education, okay? So here is where, this is what the law ensures. As written, the law ensures that your school or any governing agency provides your child with a free, appropriate public education that includes specially designed instruction to meet your child's unique needs, to prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. I've quoted it, this is right outside of the law. So this is exactly what it says. So you have to remember, free, appropriate, and designed for their unique needs. Each IEP should be individually looked at. It should not be compared with other children who are deaf and hard of hearing or have the same disability as your child. It is only your child. So here are the differences. So those of you who are birth to 3, you're under an individual family service plan. That is the legal contract between you and the early intervention folks stating what you're going to be doing with the child, what types of interventions they're going to have. And your IEP is an individual education plan. Again, it's a living contract between you and your local education agency as what are they providing to your child and what that looks like. Your 504 plan, here's information on that. To be eligible for a 504, you must have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits at least one major life activity, which includes, and I've only put hearing and speaking because there are many, many more there. So a child who is deaf or hard of hearing would qualify for a 504 because their hearing is impeded. So they are protected under that 504 plan, and we'll talk more about that. So here we're going to talk about it. So the reason that I like to bring this up is because I often get phone calls saying, you know, my child's turning 3, my school district has not found any delays, so they want to put her under a 504 plan. This happens a lot. Why? Because early intervention is doing a really good job for most of our children. and they are catching up, and they are closing the gap, and they do look like their same-aged peers at age 3. So that's happening. Here is where it gets sticky. If a child has an individual education plan, then they have people that are assigned to specific goals. So a goal would be written for the child. Say, for instance, it would be the child will be able to say S sounds with certain number of prompts 40% of the time. And then as the year progresses, that 40% will get closer to 100. I mean, that's where it is. The reason that is a better plan is because someone is always watching your child. They are always seeing that they are still making progress, that they're not falling behind, because when you're on a 504, there are no goals. So no one is watching them. So if your child cannot raise their hand and say, I didn't hear that, or I'm supposed to sit in the front seat, or whatever their accommodation might be, I can guarantee they're not going to get it. So a 504 plan given to our little ones just doesn't make any sense. So we often will go into that saying, okay, well, when we're thinking about the development of an education plan for a child, we should be looking at the child as a whole. We shouldn't just be looking at their academic needs. We should be looking at their social emotional too. And I can guarantee that a lot of our kids need some assistance where social emotional is concerned. Okay, they have a harder time in groups, typically. There are certain pragmatic language that they don't understand, like, get off my back, Jack. All of our kids would think very literally and say, who's Jack? I don't know who Jack is. Why is he on my back? They don't get that kind of interstitial language that normal hearing, typical developing children would understand just by being in the situation. So our kids can miss some of that. So there's always these things that I guarantee if we tested a little bit more on our kids, we would find something that they still need work on. So always go into it thinking, I'm not really ready for a 504. I don't think my kid could speak for themselves. Find out a way that you can get an IEP, and I am there to help you guys if you need that. But think self-advocacy skills. Our kids are going to have to learn how to self-advocate. They're going to have to learn how to seek out the right place in a room to sit. Understand how to troubleshoot their equipment, because they're going to have equipment. Understand where their interpreter is supposed to be and why, okay? If they can't do that, and does anybody have a 3-year-old that could do that? No, not likely, right? So until they are prepared and capable of doing that, it's not a good idea to put them on a 504. Any questions on that? Does it make sense? Yes?
So, if you say, I want an IEP, they're like, you go to the meeting, they're saying this is a 504 meeting, and you say, well, no, I think my child needs an IEP meeting, and then what can they say back to you?
Right.
They say, well, we only do 504s for children with medical needs.
Okay, that's a very good question, and she leaned into it really well. So her question was, what if you go to a meeting and they say, and you say, I want an IEP for my child, and they say, we only give a 504 to children with this disability. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. First of all, they're not looking at the individual needs of the kid if they say that. They are automatically, they've already placed your child, and that is illegal. All right, in their mind, they've already said, this child is fine, they need a 504. They've missed an integral person at that IEP meeting, in that IEP team. Who is that? Does anybody know? The parent, okay? If they do not take parent input into account, that's an issue. If they're not looking at social emotional, that's a problem. They really do need to look at social emotional. Sometimes when we're into the school districts, what are they thinking of? They need to meet the core curriculum. They need to be able to pass these tests. They need to be able to do that. Social emotional is a huge part of education. It's extremely important. So there are many, many ways around that. And you talk about the social emotional. You ask for a social emotional assessment to see where they are. Are they age appropriate? Not typically. They're not. Yes?
Earlier intervention, and you want your child to be evaluated by the school, what is the first thing you should do?
Okay, so she said, what if you missed early intervention and you want your child to be evaluated by the school? You contact your local education agency and tell them you have a child who is deaf or hard of hearing and you would like to set up a meeting for an education plan, okay? Does it need to be in writing? It can be, but you're not at a legal point yet where it has to be in writing. You would contact, most school districts have a special ed department, contact them and say, hey, I have a deaf, hard of hearing kiddo coming in, can you tell me the process? and let them lead it. Yes?
Sorry, and what's the timeline for how quickly they have to get back to you? So let's say she calls and she says, I want an evaluation, and they say, oh yeah, we'll do it, and then a month goes by, 2 months goes by, she calls back and they don't do anything.
Right, if they're not doing anything, I can get you the exact numbers. I don't like to push out numbers in these sessions because there's so many of them. It's 30 or 45 days. If they're not cooperating, you can contact the State Board of Ed. They're going to protect you as well, and I can show you how to do that. They should be responding to you. If they're not, it doesn't make sense why they're not responding. Is somebody in that situation right now where their district's not responding?
We had a portion of time where she's like, we have 45 days when the school district starts to evaluate, and that was in July, and we were in December, and I hadn't heard back from him, and
Yeah.
I started just pushing.
Yeah. And that's, okay, so she said that they were in July?
Yeah, because they were out of school.
Yeah, so in July, they said they had 45 days, and that's always a tricky day. 45 working days, business days, it's always a tricky one, and I can look it up in the law if you guys need to know that specific thing, and in that situation, you would want to know, because at that point, you do need to file a complaint against them, or call them and say, can I have an email from somebody telling me why they're not doing this, because that's at the point where you want to start getting verbiage, you want it in writing.
What if they say that they did an IEP meeting, but you wasn't involved or no one that you know of?
Okay, for your child?
Yeah.
Okay, so what if they did an IEP meeting and you weren't involved? They didn't do an IEP meeting legally at all. Parents must be involved. There are parents who don't want to be involved. And then there are legal pursuits that this district can take so that that child can get a fair education. However, that's not typical, especially for people who are at things like this, so that's not going to be your situation, but they should not be doing an IEP without you. You're the one that has to sign off on it and say, yes, it is okay. And these days we don't have to have a legal signature on it, but you have to email them within 10 days saying, I'm not accepting this, in order for it to not go into effect. So parents are supposed to be there. Did that happen to you?
Yes.
Okay, that should not have happened to you at all. Now, sometimes they might have a child who they feel needs additional assistance, maybe a slight learning disability. If that's the case, then it's not an IEP that they've developed. But if they've developed an IEP without you, that is no-no. I don't know how they did it, because if you look at the law, parents are listed first as an IEP member. And we'll get into that in more detail. Okay, so Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's what helps you get into public buildings. For our kiddos who are deaf and hard of hearing, it helps them to go to a movie theater and be able to watch the movie with captions, those types of things. Going to a theater and they want to have access with an ASL interpreter, that's ADA that would cover that. ADA can also protect you in the schools. It doesn't typically protect you. Usually your IEP does, the IDEA does. However, there are situations where an ADA compliance would be needed. And the reason for that is IDEA provides an appropriate education, right? ADA requires equal access. Sometimes appropriate and equal do not mean the same thing. Just because a child could benefit from something doesn't mean that that's appropriate. It could be above the realm of appropriate, but it could be equal. Here's an example. Your child is in high school, and I know you guys are like, hold on, my kid is 3. They will be in high school someday, in a blink of an eye. Mine's 16 now, so they do make it there. When they get to high school, the amount of information that they're having to receive becomes immense. So our kiddos, and my child uses verbal language, and she listens with her implants. So for her, all that information, she's missing a lot of stuff. So we wanted to have captioning. So somebody would be at home with a speaker in their ear, captioning everything that the teacher who's wearing a mic is saying. Under IDEA, that is not an appropriate need. She's doing well in school. She's got A's and B's. They would deny it under IDEA. But under ADA, because she's looking for equal access, she could get that. So that's when it could actually take place in the schools. All right, and here's your website for that. Here's what it looks like if you want to know information on ADA. So your state also protects. So the IDEA is a federal law, Do you have a question?
Yeah, so just for some clarification.
Yeah.
So if, like, let's say we're not able to afford, like, the Roger system, and it's something that our child does need for school, and the school is fighting us on providing that, the ADA would cover us?
You could, okay, so she's asking what if a child needs an FM or a Roger system, and the school is saying that they won't cover it. First of all, I can give you some great ways that potentially we can get them to cover it under IDEA, but yes, if they don't, you just say, okay, then I want to open up an ADA compliance because my child isn't getting equal access.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, so here's your State Board of Ed, ISBE or ISB, as you will hear out there. So IDEA is a federal law. It is not required for states to take that federal law. Does anyone have a guess how many states have said, nope, not interested? None? None? Half? 5? It is none. Who said that? Yay! You guys are great. Why is it none? Why'd you say none?
They get
I don't know, I just,
She called it. They get funding. They wouldn't get those federal funds if they said, nah, we're not really interested. The state of Illinois cannot afford to not take funds for the federal government. Okay, so they need to do that. So they can enhance it, however. And I'll show you a couple of places where they have enhanced the IDEA. So they can't take anything away, but they can add to it. Here's what that website looks like. Families and students, you can go in there. You can download an IEP that is blank. It's 23 pages blank, okay? So go in there, do yourself a favor, go in there and take a look at it. Just so you have a general idea. There are sections in it that you will not go through at the beginning, and there are sections in it that you will never go through. There's behavioral sections, and if your child's disability isn't causing behavior concerns, you won't have to go through that. And then there's a transition that happens at 14 and a half, so you'll have to wait for that. Yes?
So by blank, do you mean like there's a section that says like goals and then there's just no answer?
Correct.
Okay, so,
So,
it
yep.
gives you like the topic.
Right, and
Okay.
so she said by blank, do you mean it's got a section that says goals with nothing in it? Correct.
Okay.
Now, districts do not have to use the one that is out there, but they do have to incorporate everything. So I've seen some in landscape and portrait, they're in all different things, but they have to have all the sections, okay? So our main focus today is going to be the federal law, because that's what you really should start with. Like I had said early on, free appropriate public education that includes specially designed instruction for the unique needs of your child. Okay, so let's talk in terms of baseball. Our child can't hear without assistance, right? So think of it as your kid's out there with kids in their class. All the kids have a mitt, but your kid does not. How would they do if the ball came to them? Would they catch it? You'd probably hit them in the head, right? They wouldn't do well. IDEA and your IEP document is giving them a glove. It's not giving them a golden glove. That's why they say the term appropriate. If they wanted a golden glove, it'd say they'd give them the best, right? It gives them an appropriate education. Does that make sense? It's just to get them on a level playing field with the rest of their peers. We should never compare one deaf child to another deaf child. We should be comparing all children who are deaf and hard of hearing with children who are not, okay? So every person at the IEP meeting, everyone on that team holds a piece of the puzzle that will put the education program for that child into place. So we're going to talk about some law. And I think I used to do this after lunch, and then I switched it around because everybody would be falling asleep. It can be boring, but I'm just going to give you guys surface level stuff. And if you feel like you want to know more, you can stay after class, or you can go and look it up yourself. So we're going to talk about 1400. In every law, they have to explain and express what the findings and the purpose of this law are. Findings are we have children in the school system who have disabilities, right? The purpose, how can we provide them an equal education? The definitions are the next section, because some words in each law may mean different things. So they're going to define what is a child with a disability, etc. In section 1412, We're going to talk about LRE, ESY, child find and private placement. You will learn that our world is full of acronyms, and we will talk about all those acronyms later. 1414 talks about evaluations, eligibility, education plans, and placement. And then 1415 is due process, which is your last resort. You cannot come to agreement with your school. You would go to due process, which is a long, tedious legal battle, which often parents do not win. So my goal is for you to never have to go there. Procedural safeguards. So those of you who have already had an IEP, raise your hand. Did you guys get a copy of your procedural safeguards? It's about this thick. Did you read them? You didn't get them? You need to call your school and ask for them. Did you read them? Parts of it? Who else? Did you read it? Okay, neither did I. Yeah, I filed it with the IEP. Read them. What these are the rules that protect you under that law. They're really great. It's really great information. If this happens, what can I do? So read that. It's really great. And then discipline, and basically discipline for a child. I'm not going to go into this in detail today, but if your child has a disability that causes, say they have bipolar disorder, and it causes them to be very aggressive, there would need to be a behavior plan in place, because otherwise that child would be disciplined in accordance to the local education agency, your district, and could get expelled. And they should not get expelled because of their disability. So if your child is only deaf and hard of hearing, chances of you needing the discipline thing are slim, but a lot of our kids have other disabilities as well. So keep that in mind. All right, so I've already read this to you, but here's what it looks like in the law. So you'll see this section 1400 and all these letters in parentheses and quotes. And this is exactly what it says, and it's talking about the specially designed program to meet their unique needs for further education, employment, and independent living. Okay, so read this. Okay, so those of you already under an IEP, do any of you have this?
Do we have?
Yeah, do they have special learning disability? They do? Anybody else? Okay, so if you're reading the law, and this is a good learning tool. If you're reading the law, and I'm going to go to my school now and I'm going to say, my child can't hear, they have a special learning disability, I'm going to find that I didn't read to the bottom of the law. Because if I read to the bottom of the law, and I took that slide out, but if I read to the bottom of the law, it actually says that hearing, the inability to hear is not a special learning disability.
Mine's for a different kid. Sorry.
Okay, so yeah, okay.
Mine's not for the hearing.
Right, so there are those kids who, they can hear, but maybe the brain is not able to process what they're hearing, or they're dyslexic, or they're dysphoric. Those are the kids that they're talking about. So here's my lesson to you. If you're gonna go into that IDEA and you're gonna read it, make sure you read to the very bottom, because we can sometimes find that we're gonna go to our district and we're gonna say the wrong thing. I never recommend anyway that you walk to the district with your legal book and plop it on the table and be ready to quote the law. That's not what you want to do. You want to use this stuff just as knowledge so that you're ready to go in. So you have one of those, and you can see how it's a little bit different than a standard IEP. All right, so yeah, read. Oh, I did put it in here. Here you go. Disorder does not include learning problems that are a primary result of vision, hearing, or motor disabilities. So understand that, read all the way through before you are ready to quote. Yes?
So this is not the situation I think I have, but if somebody is dyslexic and requires like tests to be read to them, that's what it would be covered under?
Correct. So she said if a kid is dyslexic and they require this, is this where it would be under? Yes, if it's educationally impactful, but reading something to a child could be under that 504 as well. Okay, so it just depends. It needs to be, we're going to talk about what that means, but it needs to impact their education in order for them to get an IEP. So just because a child has a disability does not mean that they're eligible for an IEP, and we're going to talk about that. Yes?
Okay, so what if you have an IEP, it's a pretty good one, but then you need to move to another city? Do they reevaluate, or are they gonna?
It's a good question. So she said, what if you have an IEP and it's a good one, but you're moving from one city to the next, or even one state to the next? Your IEP will follow your child, and that school district will implement it as best they can. They can say when you walk in, yeah, you know, we'll get this started right away, but we need to call a meeting, because they may do things a little bit differently, and then it's up to you whether you agree with what they're saying or not. Most of the time they just accept them, and they just do what they were getting. They facilitate what they were getting in the last.
Always make sure you have a copy of it, because sometimes when you move schools, somehow it gets missed with their school.
Oh yeah, I'll drive that home a lot today. Make sure you have a copy of it. Yes, make sure you have a copy of it. So here's where the definition is. So in general, the term child with a disability means a child with. And then there's a long, long list, and I put the disability categories that I mainly work with, which is hearing and vision. And then who, by reason thereof, needs special education and related services. So that's how it's defined. Okay. Yes?
Do they really split hairs when determining deafness and hard hearing?
Give me do they split hairs between deafness and hard of hearing?
Yeah, it's not profoundly deaf, it's just hard of hearing. He's got hearing aids. So are they going to like split hairs and determine like, well, he can hear still, his hearing aids. He's not profoundly deaf.
Right. Well, okay, so is they going to split hairs and say, well, he's not profoundly deaf, so what does he need? If they're doing that, they're not doing it properly, because they need to look at his unique needs, regardless. There are some kids who have a mild hearing loss who aren't even found until 3rd grade, because they do really well. And then there are some kids with a mild hearing loss that can't vocalize at all, can't hear at all. It just depends on the kid, and if we're not looking at them individually, then we're doing it wrong. Okay? This is something, so in the state of Illinois, there are 13 disability categories. One is deafness, and one is hearing impairment, that they call it on there. Kiddos who have any kind of amplification and utilize it and can hear, even if they're profoundly deaf, would be hearing impaired on their IEP. They would not be deaf. Even though they are, just understand if they are able to hear and utilize any sound, they would be hearing impaired. Doesn't matter. They're equal. So does anybody know what this acronym means? Am I hearing somebody talk? Oh, okay. Does anybody know? All right. It means, what does this acronym mean? I made my own acronym because that's what the world seems to do. Okay? So we're going to talk about some of them. Do yourself a favor. If someone talks about something that you don't know about, don't think that you're going to look dumb if you ask the question, what on earth do you mean? Please ask. Yes?
So I'm a special ed teacher, so I'm just going to piggyback on that. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. We went through almost an entire IEP meeting, and at the end, a parent says, what's IEP mean? We had said it over 100 times in the meeting, and sometimes we forget, because we do them as a daily basis,
Right.
to explain some of those little acronyms.
Right.
And so ask the questions.
Yeah.
Ask.
So
I want you to ask.
So she's a parent, but she's also a special ed teacher, and she went through an entire IEP meeting, and the parent asked at the end, what is an IEP? Ask. Because you're going to have these goals written that have words like monosyllabic, that have words that you have never heard in your life. Ask what they mean, and even be comfortable in saying, is there any way we can redraw that, so if I look at that later, I still remember what it means? Be comfortable in asking that, okay? So LRE is the least restrictive environment. ESY is extended school year. And we're going to talk about child find and instructional school plans, ISPs. So you're going to hear IEP, you're going to hear IDEA, you're going to hear all of these acronyms. Believe me, you will eventually know what they mean. But if you don't know what they mean, ask, okay? So least restrictive environment. I'm going to let you guys go ahead and read the definition. Okay, so least restrictive environment. Most layman way to say it is all children with disabilities should be educated in their local school, in their local neighborhood with other children who do not have disabilities. So here is you guys can't read this now, but you'll be able to see it when you get your CD. This is just a really great snapshot of what does it mean to have least restrictive versus most restrictive. So least restrictive would be students placed in a general classroom with no additional assistance. That's the least restrictive under the law. Where most restrictive would be a child who's maybe hospital or homebound. Most restrictive, right? They're never with their kids. But with our kids who are deaf and hard of hearing, especially our kids who use sign language, we really need to figure out if the definition that we see here is least restrictive for our kids or most restrictive. So we're going to talk about that in detail, but basically put, children need to be able to communicate directly to their teachers and to their peers. If they are placed in your local school and they only utilize sign language and they have an interpreter, who are they directly communicating with? Their interpreter. So in that case, how many friends do you think that kiddo is going to make? One, the interpreter, right? So we need to really redefine and determine what does the least restrictive environment mean for our kids who are deaf and hard of hearing who utilize a manual communication. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. The state of Illinois in 2015 put an additional piece into the IEP document under linguistic needs, and it includes kids who are deaf and hard of hearing. So you guys will know what that is, and you will make sure that your IEPs include it. Okay? Extended school year. So one of the many calls that I will get in April and May every year are from people saying, my school district is not providing extended school year, but they said I could go to the summer school at their school. So does that mean that they'll pay for the summer school? Extended school year and your district summer school are not the same thing. Okay? Summer school is for every kid to have more learning over the summer if a parent wishes to pay for it. Anybody in here have kids already in school in the school district? Okay, so do they have a summer school program? Okay, summer school program? Okay. Yeah, so usually the summer school programs will have maybe kiddos that need a little bit more help in math or are doing really great in math, so they have an advanced class and a remedial class just to get them caught up. That's what that's about. Extended school year, here is the definition of that. Yes?
What's FAP?
Woohoo! You get an A+. Were you going to ask the same question? What is FAPE? Did all of you know what that is? Some of you might. Free appropriate public education. Oftentimes, you will hear districts and people refer to it as FAPE. Okay, so know that that's what FAPE is. It's free appropriate public education designed under IDEA. All right, so basically extended school year is going to be determined on an individual basis for your child. Local education agency, LEA, local education agency, your school district. Okay, sometimes in some states, I teach this nationally. Some states, they call it lead education agency. I don't know why, same thing though, okay? So you have your state board of ed and underneath are all those local ed agencies. So private placement versus, okay, so private placement, there are two options on here. There are private placed where the school has made a decision along with the parent that a private placement would be the most optimal place for your child. Anybody have their kid already under age 3 in a private school? Anybody? Okay. Say, for instance, you wanted to send your child to, there's a school in, where is it? Wheeling called A.G. Bell Montessori. Anybody heard of that school? Okay, so A.G. Bell Montessori is a Montessori school that has a cued speech program entwined into it. So that is a private placement. If a child is doing well there, then a parent might seek the district to place them there as an IEP. School districts don't like to do that, but sometimes if they are really great at doing IEPs and this is going to meet the individual needs of that child, then they will place them there. So if the team agrees that, yep, we're going to place them there, then the child is under an IEP, like we've been talking about, and they have to be transported by school district's expense, and everything is paid for. You never have to pay anything. So that is an IEP. It's placed by the team. The other thing is if it's placed by the parent. And I'm going to use a different example. Anybody here go to Catholic school growing up? Or Christian school? Well, a lot of times when parents go to a private school, they want their kids to go to that private school as well. If the parents say, yep, thanks for saying where you want to place my kid, I'm going to place them here, this is where I went, this is where I want them to go. At that point, the IEP is not accepted by the parent and your IEP meeting is over. The school is not required to cover that tuition. However, there is what we call an individual service plan, and this is a document that is drawn up for students within a district who are placed in a private school. So what that entails is the school district has funding for all of its privately placed kids, and it can do whatever it wants with that funding. So you are very limited in what you are going to get for your child. It's important to understand that because you're not going to get speech services, FM system, occupational therapy, and all of that. You can get maybe one. Maybe the district has decided we're only going to provide speech therapy for our privately placed kids. They can do whatever they want with it. Think of it as they get a lump sum for their private placed kids, and it's up to them. It's at their discretion. Here's that definition. Go ahead and read that. Okay? Yes?
If there's a better program in a different district and you want your child to attend that program, what do you do?
Okay, if there's a better program in a different district than the one you're housed in, what do? You seek the school district to cover that placement. There are many programs that are not within your district that a school could pay into. It doesn't mean that they will, but it's worth a try. Here, we're going to talk about this in detail, but I'll talk about it now and we'll skip through it later. If you have a placement like that you're interested in, my recommendation is to ask the district, number one, what do you provide? Where do you typically house your deaf and hard of hearing kids? What are the options? And typically they're going to say, well, we have a self-contained classroom, we have a blended classroom, and some of them may have a deaf and hard of hearing program within their district. And then some may utilize a cooperative. So there are cooperative organizations out there that house specific disabilities. And that means that the school maybe pays money into that cooperative every year, and that their children who have that specific disability can be housed at that school. And then there's the situation like you. That's almost like doing a private placement, but seeking that the school district pays for it. You always want to view everything that your district has, and you want them to view everything that you are interested in as well. Why do you think that is? Why do you want them to view your program?
They might find it interesting.
They might find it interesting, right? Who can be a participating team member if they don't know everything that you're going to be talking about? There was a time maybe 3 years ago where I kept getting calls, districts won't go and view the program, or they won't let me view their program because of HIPAA violation. Well, you're not going in there saying, okay, Jimmy, what's your last name and where do you live? You can go and sit and view a program. That is not, there is no legal thing that says you cannot do that. So in my opinion, if a school district says, yeah, well, we have these 2 programs, but you really can't view them, and then you say, well, I guess they're off the table then. Because if I'm gonna be a participating member of this team, I need to be able to view them. Yes?
So by view them, do you mean like how in college you can do a sit-in?
Yep.
So you can like go and actually attend a class,
Right.
how the class
So,
works?
yes, so by view them, do I mean that they can just sit in there and kind of like, you know, attend the class? Yes, you sit in the back of the room and you observe the program. And you don't go in there blind and say, okay, I'm just gonna sit here and listen. You're gonna write down your questions. I have a spreadsheet that you guys are more than welcome to have. On the left side, it has a bunch of questions that you would ask about educating a deaf or hard of hearing student. And then there's columns across the top, and it's placement 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you go in and you answer those questions at each of the placements, and then you're able to actually analyze them they're all right next to each other. This is why this one will work. Here's a con here, here's a pro here. So it's a really great tool, and I think that parents have taken that and they've added their own questions to it, and it works out well. Yes?
Sorry. So do you have the option to ask like a principal or a staff member from wherever they're trying to place the kid to attend the IEP to answer any of your questions, or how do you have to go on your own time and ask those questions?
Oh, you mean when you're sitting and viewing?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have the right to ask a principal or someone to attend and sit in with you?
No, like at the IEP. So like if they were trying to place my kid at AC versus Pleasant Plains, do I have the option to request a member from each of those schools to attend the IEP so that if I have
for sure.
questions, they can answer?
Right, so she's asking if there's two possible placements outside of the district, does she have the right to invite them to view to come into the IEP meeting to speak about their program? Absolutely, I would invite the one that you want to go to.
So more on IDEA Section 1414 will be evaluations, eligibility, IEPs, and placement. So understanding the evaluations, and there's a difference between the term evaluation and assessment. Evaluations are those procedures used to qualify a child and determine their initial eligibility under IDEA for an IEP. Assessments are those ongoing procedures that are used by qualified people, especially those who manage the goals within an IEP. Those individuals will determine continual need through assessments. So you pretty much have your evaluations every 3 years, and assessments are done between that time. This information is important to understand because evaluations are not done annually unless there is need or unless we see the child showing more of a significant delay than what would be expected within 1 year's time, or if a new disability category were to be added. So how are test scores reported? Well, there's several different ways. It can be by age, by grade. It can be a standard score, percentile rank, raw score, composite score. My number one word of advice here is to always seek information. And if they give you an assessment report and they say, well, the raw score was X, find out what that raw score is and what that means. The bell curve is very important to understand as well, because many of these evaluations are done utilizing the bell curve. They can be daunting, but it's important to understand how it works. And the reason why is because a lot of times when a score is reported on a percentile rank, they'll say, well, the 50th percentile ranks here, and here's where your child has landed in comparison. Well, a lot of us will think 50%, wow, that's failing. My child's doing terribly, when in fact 50th percentile actually means that the child is right in the middle, doing average. So what we want to see on the bell curve is that they are doing either center to the right. If they are centered and to the left, where it's 16th and 2nd percentile, then we need to really look into what the needs are so that we can close that gap and get them to the midline on the percentile on the bell curve and move them to the right side, which would put them within the standard or above the standard. We're obviously okay with that. So assessments, it's important to understand that there are several different types of assessments. Classroom-based are those ones you take every day in a class. District-wide, the entire district is expected. State and state assessments of language proficiency. Understanding this and knowing that within the IEP document, you will discuss how assessment accommodations will be made, all the way up to until the day that your child starts taking SATs and ACTs, assessment accommodations need to be specified. Remember that eligibility, just because a child has a disability, does not guarantee them to be eligible for special education and related services, meaning under IDEA. That does not mean they would not get services, they just would not require it under IDEA's law. They must meet the definition of one of the needs listed on this slide. So special learning disability, obviously ours is hearing impairment or deafness. It just depends on your child. Usually hearing impairment is used when a child uses amplification devices. There needs to be an education component. Remember that also includes socialization. So we can't just disregard socialization because a child is getting all A's and B's, because part of the realm of regular education is socialization and the ability to meld and become part of the world. There is no one method that should be used to determine whether a child is assessing the curriculum. There is more to the school curriculum than academics. Make sure that that's understood. Make sure your child's assessment in all areas of the suspected disability, not just one. Eligibility should also not drive the services. The child should receive services in all of the areas of need. And it is known that children who are deaf and hard of hearing can have social delay or the inability to work well in groups or things like that. Those are skills that can be honed in on and that can be taught. So it's important that when we say, oh, well, in math, reading, writing, they're doing great, we have to think of these other aspects of learning as well. So that's very important.